Good morning to you all. It's honestly a great honor to be invited here, and I'm grateful to my very senior colleague, Mr. Sharad Pawar, that he thought of me as being appropriate to be here for the validity address of this very historic, important conference that you've had, Congress that you've had. I like the voting figures that you have, and I'm hoping that we'll have similar voting figures when the results come. Difficult to find that kind of sweep, but we'll try. We'll give it a try. I'm delighted that I'm here in the presence of Dr. Ayappan, Secretary of the Department of Agricultural Research, Education, and the DG of ICAR, and of course our friend from Nairobi, Dr. Anthony Simons, Director General of the World Agroforestry Center, my colleague from Sri Lanka, Honorable Minister Jagat Pushpakarma. I don't know if you all know what that means. He is the Lord of the flower of the world. To have a name that is so beautiful, frankly, you don't need anything else in life if you have a name like that. And then, of course, we have Mr. Alok Sika and Mr. Ravi Pradhan, and very distinguished friends from across the globe. I was described as a farmer. I'm not a farmer. I'm actually a forester, at least a forester by conviction. And I realized that you can't go to a real forest, natural forest. You can always find a forest around yourself, make a forest for yourself by being an agroforester and create a forest around yourself. I've wondered, when we work on forests, I wondered whether I have a special claim to it. You've been speaking of trees for life. I come from a place in UP where we do a lot of block printing on silk, and the icon there and the very, very, very significant blocks that are made for printing on silk have the icon of the tree of life. So the tree for life and the tree of life combine well, I believe, in my presence here today. And I've often thought that when I see the picture of tree of life, they're not just fruits and foliage, but also some animals swinging in the branches. And I would certainly be very excited if part of your agroforestry and planting of some beautiful trees, and I've just discovered that there are other trees that can be introduced and are being introduced in India. I wanted to know the fate of the Suba bull that our late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi talked of and made a little bit of a legend around it in our childhood. Similarly, new trees are coming to India, which can make an enormous, enormous difference, not just to our economy, but also to our relationship with nature and indeed with the landscape and the quality of life and air around us. And I hope that when these are introduced, along with these trees, you introduce some birds and animals as well. I've often wondered why we've had trees from Australia, for instance. We've had the eucalyptus, but we forgot to bring some koala bears with the eucalyptus. Eucalyptus would have meant a lot more if there were koala bears jumping around or sleeping on them. We need to make our environment really, really energetic, active, for people who are growing up, fascinating. Trees by themselves are fascinating. Flowering trees, fruit trees, shapes of trees are fascinating. But I think we could populate them a little bit more. It would be even more exciting. I'm very fond of a story of Mullah Nasruddin that I often repeat to people like you who gather at congresses and conferences and conventions of this nature. Because I think the presumption is that most of you know a great deal more than the person who's coming to deliver the validity address can communicate, because largely We are given notes to study, and some of us may have some background, but largely it is command performance. And I often like to tell people like you that there's a story, a beautiful story of Mullah Nasruddin, who is a character from Central Asia, who had to address people like you, and he wasn't very well prepared, so he got up and said, "So, ladies and gentlemen, do you know what I'm going to say?" And everyone said, "No, we are waiting." He said, "I don't like speaking to people who don't even know what I'm going to say," and he walked straight out. So he was called back the following week, summoned and asked to speak. And he got up again and said, "So, ladies and gentlemen, you know what I'm going to say?" And everybody said, "Of course we do. Of course we do." And he said, "Good, then I needn't say it." And off he went. So everyone thought, look, let's get this guy back. And half of us will say we do, and half of us will say we don't, so that he will at least end up saying something. So he arrived again and said, "So you know what I'm going to say?" And half of them said, "No, not at all, not at all." And the other half said, "Of course we do." So he looked, smiled, and said, "That's wonderful. So those who will know will please tell those who don't, my job is done." So when you come to a conference of this nature, frankly, there are so many people who know so many things, and you've already had 4 days to discuss it all. And so what I would do is merely regurgitate some things that you have consumed and you have digested and you've obviously benefited from. But it's important to say to you that in our government taking a position on agroforestry and giving a policy on it, we are trying to make a paradigm shift forward. There's a lot of good intentions and a lot of talk about what we need to do to preserve the environment, preserve trees, the forest cover of our country, degraded forest cover included. We now are about 19% of the forest cover of our entire country, which is far less than what we inherited, obviously, when we became independent. And the stress and pressure on forest cover remains very significant. And it's amazing that the stress and pressure comes not only from people who exploit, but also from people who are part of the forest and deserve the first claim over the forest. These are people of the forest. We've provided legislation for them in the hope and expectation that by recognizing their traditional forest rights, we would probably end up protecting not just them, but also the forests that are the basic feed for them. The entire film, Avatar, repeats itself for us in real life, every week, every month, every year. What to cut because you need it, and what to preserve because you must, because it's essential spiritually, it's essential philosophically, it's essential environmentally, it's essential physically, politically. All these questions arise all the time. And therefore, while we do have to make accommodation and adjustment for expansion of industry, building of roads, with great regret, but of building of dams and inundating and submerging vast areas of forest land and sometimes agricultural land. We need to provide new lungs. If we are losing the lung capacity, we will need to provide new lungs, and that's where agroforestry becomes extremely important. But I also think it's important in aesthetic terms. Trees add to the beauty of the landscape, and therefore, if we do plantations in the right way, in the right place, in right measure, I think we add quality to the landscape. And it's my belief that beautiful surroundings do contribute to making beautiful minds. And what we certainly need in our times are, frankly, beautiful minds. And therefore, the forests can play, and agroforestry can play a very important role. I want to pay tribute to the people like Mr. Bahugna, whose Chipko movement, embracing trees to prevent their destruction and dedicating a whole lifetime to it, actually awakened our conscience in the country some years ago. about how it was important that we do not treat the plant species as being in any way inferior to us. The famous philosopher who spoke of importance of controlling species behavior is no less important than controlling racist behavior, because the importance of every species, plant and animal, is going to be very important for us as we move forward. I think that what you are here to look at and have considered is that the traditional approaches, the wholesome traditional approaches to forestry, to agroforestry, social forestry it's called sometimes, I hope I'm not wrong there, was done in silos and in separate watertight compartments, but that your thinking and our modern thinking is to put the trajectory of agriculture and forestry development programs not as a business as usual model, but actually to marry crops and trees together, which is what I believe you have done very successfully in your discussions. Of course, in India, we've made significant progress in the last 3 decades using technology and science-based practices, best practices, looking at possibilities and areas that we hadn't explored adequately in the past. There is still a lot more work to be done to domesticate indigenous fruit and medicinal trees and promote their cultivation on farms, supplementing and complementing farm productions. Research partnerships between agroforestry and medical and nutritional sciences and the food products industry is the key, is really something that we all need to look at. And obviously, it goes without saying that there has been legitimately a preoccupation with grain crops, and of course our commitment to food security. The most ambitious food security mission and program in the world is what India has launched this year, giving a legislative, a statutory right to 67% of our population to food, to nutritious food, to be able to deliver that promise, to be able to deliver that substantively and to ensure that we have adequate stocks for it is a very, very major challenge. But we have launched upon it, and I think Rita Sharma, who's here, knows a lot about it, and the NSC that she's engaged in part of the Secretariat has made this major contribution. I've just looked at some figures, the IPCC report and several other studies that give us an alarming, we are still celebrating the growth of production. We are saying that we've broken all-time records in production of grain in our country. But we're looking also at reports that are saying there'll be 10 to 40% loss in crop production in India and other countries of South Asia by 2080 to 2100 because of increasing temperatures, the climate change, global warming, and of course the critical decrease in water for irrigation. Our water we need for irrigation, we need for industry, we need for drinking, and we need for the rivers themselves. If you take all the water away from the river, you kill the river in many ways. So to have water for all this is not easy. So how do we deal with all this? Inevitably, we will come back. We will come back to the tree for life and the tree of life. We will come back to it, and that's where we need the entire attention now of humanity, of all of us, to see what we can do. because in many ways, the tree will be our protector and our savior in sequestering carbon, ensuring that the carbon in the atmosphere is captured and stored in the plant as biomass, using the biomass again for energy and for efficient supply of energy. Agroforestry also thereby enhancing the resilience of agriculture to climate change by providing essentially a natural adaptation and mitigation convergence. Conversion of unproductive croplands and grasslands to agroforestry will again be a massive help to economy, particularly for the poorest people. So I think that we are here today, in a sense, in a mission and a revolution to protect humankind, looking at expanding the footprint of outreach beyond the great Indian success of the Green Revolution, something that the Green Revolution within its definition cannot include what you're trying to do here would certainly include. I would like to recall the Earth Summit in Rio of 1992, where the three international conventions, namely the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the Convention on Biological Diversity, and Convention to Combat Desertification, all the three conventions that we all celebrated, but we are still to deliver on those conventions, inevitably focus on trees. And therefore, agroforestry can, at the end of the day, contribute to our commitment for fulfillment of those convention commitments. Therefore, we think that you've had a chance to look at what India has been doing. We need a lot more that needs to be done, which we are committed to, and we hope that over the next 10 years, you will see some of that be rolled out. Today's theme then, the Trees for Life, Accelerating Impacts of Agroforestry, is timely, it is critical, it is a moral imperative, and indeed, I think it's one great human commitment that you're all here to work for. I congratulate you, and I'm absolutely delighted that I had the honor to be able to address you. I salute your New Delhi Declaration on Agroforestry, and may I just say in the end, may we all plant 1 million trees, and may these trees bring happiness, prosperity to generations to come. The tree that you plant today will provide shade, shelter, protection, and life to generations to come. And generations to come will, in gratitude, remember our generation as a generation that thought beyond its own daily requirements. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.